Good evening. Welcome to the business edition of PM Express. There are a lot of businesses out there that are said to be reeling under the pressure of COVID-19. But the question is, what do we do for them? Do we extend a package to them, or we actually offer them some policy reliefs in these challenging times? Well, this is all know that the debate out there as in what do we do for our businesses who are actually struggling in the midst of 19. Well, I'm getting some answers and interesting debate from the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation and also Aboagye-Wiafe. So asking what should be the best way out in assisting businesses that are going through a lot of challenges in the midst of COVID-19. Should we extend some stimulus package to them, or it's more about improving the environment so they can survive? All these things wrapped up on the business edition of PMX. Right back after this break. Welcome back to the business edition of PM Express as we talk about the private sector and assisting businesses out there in the wake of COVID-19. What should be the approach in supporting them? And talking about private sector businesses out there, well, there's no other person to engage than the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation and also Aboagye-Wiafe. Nana, thank you so much for having time to engage us in these interesting times, I must say.
I'm very grateful for that.
How are private businesses doing? I mean, I know this is quite interesting. How are they doing now?
I think the answer is obvious. We all are not doing well, and so is our businesses and our people. But the first and foremost is to make sure that we save lives. Because if you have employees and you expect them to come to work, they have to have the confidence to know that they're not going to be contracting any disease before they get to the office or back home. So that definitely is an area that collectively both government and private sector have to make all the efforts to make sure that people's confidence are restored so they can come to work comfortably. And that involves government providing the guidelines, enlisting the services and participation partnership of the private sector. Make sure that we have laboratories that can also do some testing. Because the key answer to this is testing, testing, testing. If we test enough, then we can tell the people that, yes, we are safe. But when we haven't tested, then it's everybody's ball game, and we all scared to do whatever. I'm scared sitting next to you, you're scared sitting next to me. So because we haven't tested. But we need to be testing enough. And we have Noguchi and FDA and the others talking to make sure that most of our laboratories in Ghana are equipped enough to do what we call rapid testing. We're talking about opening businesses. We're talking about opening schools. We need some screening. So at least if we screen 50% of the people, it gives confidence to everybody that, yes, we are safe and that we can go and do our businesses. So the first and foremost is life savings. Because if you don't save lives, there's no business. And the businesses are also going to perform basically because lives are saved, and basically there's patronage for their businesses. The patronage is what? Buying and selling. And that is on the back of the people.
Instead here, we are trying to observe the social distancing to ensure that all the protocols are being observed. But do I also get from you and your members that in these times, with the little funds at your disposal, you are being forced to, again, do extra investment to ensure that you save the lives of your workers and even you yourself? Because there's little funds available right now, but you have to observe those protocols and ensure that you invest in face masks, water, and all those things, sanitizers, and all those things.
Yes, you know, it's easy to make the rules, but compliance is at cost because you expect people to wear face masks. They have to pay for it. You expect social distancing at the workplace. Who is paying for it? We expect people to work from home. My people don't have laptops at home. We don't have infrastructure in the office to connect and and make sure that they also are linked. So there's an extra cost in maintaining the discipline and the protocols that are being put in place. And that is where private sector needs help. Because collectively, as I said, we're all fighting this pandemic. And if government is going to make the rules, then the legislature and others have to make sure that the resources are created for businesses to tap into it. Businesses on their own have no plan for this. And I don't even think government had planned for this. So there's no residual or emergency resources available for them to tap in and do. So this is where I think I have difficulty understanding why government is not creating the capacity, the enough resources for businesses to tap in to do. The 600 million we're talking about cap, it's peanuts. It's not going to do anything. Bank of Ghana now created 25 billion for government to do other things. This is emergency times, needs emergency action, needs doing business unusual, not the usual ways. So we have to collectively sit together and say, okay, what as a country do we need? How can we get the people working again? How can we get the people going to schools? Because look, all the systems gradually are collapsing. And if we're not careful and we don't take drastic action as a country, we're not going to make it.
No, I mean, one question that I want to find out from you is that from the perspective of private businesses, have you been able to establish what you want? Because when I engage certain people, I get the understanding that, George, it's not about the money, it's about the environment, the enabling environment. Some are saying that, yes, we need stimulus package. It doesn't come early. It's a problem for us. Do you know, private sector and your members, do you know what you guys want?
Yes, indeed.
What do you want?
I can tell you what we need in my sleep.
Private sector, private, what do you want?
We want money. Liquidity is the bread and butter of business. You don't do business with peanuts or anything. Without money, you can do nothing. And if you get money, then you look at the other incidentals that go with it. What are those? Capable management. What are those? Enablers in the system that allow you to do business freely without encumbrances of the law. So those are things that, but the first and foremost is money. Tell me any country that had prospered without resources, without money. And so for people to think that it's not the money, I don't know where they're coming from, it's the money. Once you get the money, then you look at the technical competencies and the skills that's supposed to utilize the money efficiently. And once you have that, then you look at the enablers within the policy framework. Because if the money is there and the policy framework, I think that's maybe where they're coming from. The policy framework is not conducive. You can do business. Yes, there must be what we call free market access, free market economy. That within the rule of law, you have freedom to express your elbows and push everything out and be able to do what needs to be done in a rule of law, that you don't break the rules. Those are things that are incidental, so far as I'm concerned, to money. But if you don't have the money, they can give you all the freedom you want. What are you going to do with it? You can sell, you can buy, you can develop, you can create, and that's what is going to happen. So we need money, private sector. We need the technical skills, private sector. We need the resources, private sector. We need the rules of engagement, private sector. We need the enablers as well.
What has been the level of engagement between the private sector and government as we speak right now?
Well, level of engagement depends what you mean by that.
As in, what have you put on paper? When I am trying to ask you about what you want, what have you put on paper to government that this is what we want? This is our situation. This is what we need.
Thank you for this, because tomorrow, the government, I understand, that had developed a 2-year plan to resurrect the economy. And that 2-year plan calls for private sector input and all. And tomorrow, Private Enterprise Federation, chairing the International Business Associations, the American Chamber of Commerce, the British UK Chamber of Commerce, the Germans, the French, and others, together with our locals, are now presenting a paper to government as to what we want. What we want, first and foremost, allow us to do among ourselves. As I told you earlier, we can have a business in the mining industry. Now they flush with money. If government gives them incentives and engage them, they can link themselves to the small players in agriculture. And because agriculture and mines, they have the same umbilical cord. Agriculture is on top, mines is underneath. So policy framework that link the two is easier. If we allow and incentivize them, that, okay, if you bankroll the small players, smallholder farmers in the areas that we think would yield some kind of benefits to the country, then what we would do is give you incentives and tax rebate maybe 5 years down the road. These guys are flush with money, and they need to use their money prudently. If you attract them, they would do as. But you see, government normally wants to do what government does. Government wants to be seen to be doing everything, but most of the time not to be successful. And if they're not going to be able to be successful, how can they want to be doing it? But the private sector is available. Partnership is the name of the game. Create an enabling environment, create the rules of engagement, allow private sector, PPP is not only public-private partnership, it can be private-private partnership. And they definitely will be able to do what they need to do to bring the bacon home, to create the jobs opportunity. Look, in this country, the private sector creates 93% of the jobs. Government public sector is only 6.3. Now, do I have to say anything else? So what do you need to do to create jobs? People do not set up business to create jobs. They set up business to make money. But when they're making more money, they need more hands. And that's why job opportunities are created. So government itself also is a beneficiary of private sector efficiency and private sector profitability, because the more profit we make, the more taxes we pay. And so government needs us to make money. But sometimes I think the mission is lost on government officials that, look, private sector is making too much money. Private sector always wants profit. There's no private sector anywhere that doesn't want profit.
I see. Mr. Bonsu, I was asking you about, again, the presentation or what you tabled to government. So what are some of the things that you documented to government that you want that quick response to save your members made up of private businesses, banks, enterprises, SMEs currently in the country?
As I said earlier on, the first is saving everybody, because the livelihood is the patronage of business.
In what form?
If you are dead,
resuscitate.
you cannot be a patron of mine. So we need to save lives and bring everybody alive and make sure. Even in that score, there are private sector businesses, the lab and others that can assist government to do more testing, to bring equipment in to analyze the results of the testing as quickly as possible, so confidence of the people. You see, lives is based upon confidence. If I feel confident that you don't have it, I don't have it, we can kiss. But if I feel that you're not somebody that I want to come near you, obviously I'm going to stay away from you. So we save lives. That's what private sector wants to do, number one. Number two is the resources to do what we need to do. Because there's so much confusion now. Where's the market? Who is going to patronize what we produce? So making sure that I have a linkage between the forward and backward linkage. Let's say a processor in the middle is now looking for supply chain from the smallholder farmers. They are inconsistent in their delivery. So he says, okay, what I'm going to do is put you into an outgrower nucleus farmer arrangement, put you into cooperatives to make sure that you have a contract that will supply me the needed raw materials that I need. Now, he's giving them contract and a livelihood and a chain of opportunities there. Now, the same processor is going to now produce for the market. So the market now has also produced that they products that they can also patronize. So look at the linkage, look at the collateral effect, look at the catalytic event that this person has created. So when you're doing about patronage and about stimulus package, what does stimulus mean? You have to stimulate the activity to enable or to create and engender things to happen. And that is what we're looking at. Allow private sector to create that stimulus by giving them incentives. As I said, if the Chamber of Mines or the mining companies can hold the small potatoes, babysit them, and create opportunity for them to do business, obviously it ends up what? Profitability, it ends up with jobs creation, it ends up what? With wealth creation. So these are things that can be done. And who creates that opportunity? Government, with the statutes and the regulations to create enablers that allow these things to happen.
Now, let me play the devil's advocate here. And I know in other developed economies, government, we have some putting together about $3 trillion package, stimulus package, and all the rest. But I look at the Private Enterprise Federation, and it's an umbrella body for banks, mining firms. These are very strong firms. Among yourselves, away from government, what are you also doing now to ensure that among yourselves, you stay alive as a business? Instead of looking up to government for everything, some will say.
You see, what I said earlier is private sector can do things, but it comes under the rule of law. The rule of law are the statutes and the regulations that are created by government. If they are too restrictive, private sector cannot do anything. If they open and create a market condition, private sector can dance around and do a whole lot of things. And that's why I call it enablers. If you create enablers and link the small potatoes to telcos, the telcos, and say, you telco people, now we're going to digitalization. Can you create the opportunity to link the small IT institution to become profitable? When I was young in the US, then the US government did what they call breaking up the telephone companies. Out of that came these things. They took one company, broke it up, and created 10 different mobile companies. And they were charged with the responsibility to make sure that those 10 that were created were responsible, were profitable, and were able to survive. That's antitrust. Government can create opportunity and say, okay, you guys go work with these guys. But there must be incentives because it's their money. Like talking about money, where government now says, we're going to give you a 5-7-year bond with 0 coupon. Are you kidding me? Where did government have authority to take and use my money without any payment of any interest? The right to property is guaranteed by the Constitution. So when the government itself is almost stealing from the people and not giving it to them, when they have their own right to their money, then there's something wrong. So the enablers are something that we have to sit and see that government recognizes that government cannot do it all by itself. Government can create opportunity. And if it does, the private sector will jump in quickly and take advantage of the opportunity, create the jobs and wealth for everybody to be happy.
I get from you that PEF still needs a mix of a stimulus package and a policy relief in terms of the environment. That is what you're looking at. So you need it too.
Yes.
Let's zoom in down on stimulus package. I engage the hospitality industry and I hear that we are looking up to government for a stimulus package. I engage manufacturing firms, you're looking up to government for a stimulus package. I engage private sectors and schools, you're looking up to government for. And that's why it comes back to the question again. When it comes to a stimulus package, what has the private sector put on the table for government consideration that you believe that if they go this way, that is how they can turn around businesses that are dying and resuscitate firms that are on their knees?
Stimulus package varies from one to the other. And the stimulus package that the people are talking about is not always that liquidity. It's also the enablers. And I said that before here, that if you link that I give you X as a carrot to go and help Nana to do ABC, in return, you get that. A lot of businesses will jump on that. You haven't created the liquidity for me, but you have created the opportunity for somebody to help me to do what I need to do. Let me give you an example. Under the ITA 2015, the Income Tax Act 2015, the government says any investment in youth opportunity has a 5-year tax exemption. Youth opportunity, 5-year tax exemption. But for every business that starts, the break-even point is about around 4.5 years to 5 years. So if the tax exemption is only for 5 years, by the time they break even to make profit, that has been exhausted. But if you had turned around the law and says that anybody that invests in a youth opportunity, you can take the tax exemption. So I may be 95 years, but I invest in a youth opportunity and take their resources. Back in the US some time ago, if you don't have a use for some tax exemption, you could sell it to a company that used to take advantage of that. These are enablers. These are some stimulus to stimulate you to do what will result in tangible opportunities. So it's not always government going to create 1 billion and all. This 1 billion that the president announced, government's own percentage is 600 million. You have the bankers now bringing co-matching funds to meet that. How did they come on board? Because you incentivize them, you attracted them that if you come on board and create a matching fund, then we can give you X and Z. Let me give you an example. We have a youth organization as members of the Private Enterprise Federation. They are now looking for crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, if you, George, are going to give the money, you have to maybe incentivize to do, because it has to be tax exempt. That will encourage you to give them 10 cedis instead of 1 cedi. If they say that, okay, everybody who is going to contribute to this youth crowdfunding can take it as a tax exempt. Hallelujah. Believe me, you have the churches, you have everybody coming on board and contributing. But if you don't incentivize it, nobody can come to the table. Let me give you another example. When we set up the Venture Capital Trust Fund,
which you used to be the chief executive,
which we created anyway,
okay,
not only ran it, but the point was to attract investors to partner the Venture Trust Fund to create the venture finance companies. Now, the incentive was any investor that partnered with the venture capital can take tax exemption for every corporate taxes that's due, so they pay 0. At the end of that, tax dividend distribution to their participants was also 0 taxes. So eventually everybody feels like, hey, this is a great opportunity. Even if I get 10%, that's tax exempt. There are no taxes on it. So if my corporate tax is 25% on top of the 10%, then obviously there's a greater return for me to invest in that. You see, using tools of taxes is very, very lucrative for government itself. But because we don't sometimes understand it, we feel like it's a loss of income. You don't have it, but you can attract participation that will yield in the long term the returns that you're looking for. So that misunderstanding in the arrangement of how you incentivize participation to create the opportunity is lost on some of our leadership and some of our people that make the decisions, that thinking that tax exemption is a wrong tool. No, it's not. So when the private sector says we're looking for stimulus package, it's a mix of policy framework and possibly liquidity. If the government does not have the liquidity, cannot create it, allow us to create it. In this environment, we don't have long-term pool of funding for businesses to tap into to do. The only one that semblance of pool of funding was EDIF, and that vanished under the radar. So now we have 0 resources for private sector to tap into. But if you incentivize people, they now would create private sector pool of funding, equity funding, all. Because it used to be when you contribute to set up an equity fund, there's 0 taxes. But Honorable Tepe put some, tax bite on it. So now the people are not interested in contributing. Look at the pension funds. The pension funds are now people, you and I can take 35% of our income as pension. Apart from the SNIT, apart from the second tier, the third tier also allows you 16.5%. How many are participating? Because majority of our people don't know about it. And if everybody, Ghana, we have about 12 million people in employment, right? Only a shade of 1 million are covered under any pension. The unpensioned people, if you take 4 million out of that, and everybody contributes 25 cedis per month, it gives you 1.2 billion in aggregation of long-term pool of funding for businesses to tap into. So you wouldn't need a stimulus package.
But then you're on record to have said that 1 billion COVID-19 relief fund, alleviation fund is not enough. I mean, some will say that private sector is being harsh because government cannot do everything.
I just said that. I agree with you. Government cannot do everything.
So if government is giving 1 billion,
it's for government to recognize that they cannot do everything.
That is enough.
So, wait, it's for government to also recognize that they cannot do everything, but allow private sector to do some of these things that need to be done. And that is, the government is the only one to create the authority. The government is the only one to create the enablers. Private sector is at the mercy of government. So a private sector does not have the authority, doesn't have the opportunity. We just be sitting and watching, doing nothing. So as much as we like the approaches, it's not that I'm not appreciative of the 1 billion.
Yeah.
Look, the 600 million came in from government.
Yeah.
But there's 400 million coming from bankers. That's private sector. That is a combination of.
Maybe then your members could have upped the table to make it about 2 billion Ghana cedis or 3 billion Ghana cedis, because these banks are quite liquid, and therefore when they extend these funds,
don't forget the Bank of Ghana's liquidity requirements on the reserve requirements and all this, packages.
It has been reviewed.
Thank you. Who has the authority to review?
The Bank of Ghana.
Part of what? Government.
Well, it's debatable as in classifying Bank of Ghana as part of government.
Of course, government appoints, and that's everything Bank of Ghana does. I will not be able to appoint the authority and the commissioner and the governor.
But so if government is providing 600 million, let's have a matching fund from private sector, or even more than that.
If you incentivize,
2 billion, 3 billion,
I said, if you incentivize, they can, they will. But create the enablers for them to do. Don't think you can take it.
What's stopping?
Let me tell you. Government is creating this 600 million. But meantime, government owned private sector 8 billion in unpaid funds that were put in financial institutions. So how do you reconcile that? How do you get the private sector whose money is locked up by the same institution to be able to come up with additional resources to do? So there must be a level playing field. Government bringing this package should have recognized that, look, we owe these guys this money. Let's go pay. And then ask them to maybe invest with us in every scenario.
You're not putting pressure on them to pay your money.
Do you need to put pressure? They recognize, they know. Do we need to put pressure?
You're not pushing them enough.
No, but I think so. That one, I agree with you. I think Ghanaians are not angry enough to demand from government the responsibility to pay back the resources that they owe them.
Yeah, so
we should push.
Now, who calls them? Some will say.
We should push. That I agree with you, and much more. Maybe seek legal action against government and make sure that government lives up to its responsibility and what they have created. The people that chop the money, where are they? What happened to them? They're riding the Mercedes and the Jaguars and the Lamborghinis around in style. And the poor people, go and see, go and stand next door to SEC, see poor people, see sick people coming to look at SEC, see if they can get their resources back. Is that right? Is this right? Is that the kind of package that we want a partnership with government?
And that's why it comes back to my question about the pressure, even if it's about issuing a bond and all the rest, certain guarantees, so that steps are taken to recover these monies so you can reinvest them in your business, because a lot of your members are going down and
they're going down.
You engage them. It's like, listen, government owes me X amount of money. If government has given me that money, I wouldn't be this particular state that I am in.
Unfortunately, you don't have a police and a stick and a gun to hold at the head of the government. But you're looking at government being responsible to the point that, yes, indeed, these are people we encourage to put their monies in licensed institutions. They didn't go play poker with anybody or susu with anybody. In licensed institutions, and if these things have happened, then we should pay them back. Don't give them 5-year bond of 0 coupon. What's term value of money? By the time the 100 Ghana cedis is paid in 5 years, it might be 20 cents.
You think it's a bad deal?
It's a responsible deal. I say, it's irresponsible. Is that the right of anybody to seize the assets of one and use it and say, I'm only going to pay you?
The package of the receiver and then working it out
of the receiver. Did I appoint the receiver? What happened to the money we put in the bank? Who was responsible to make sure the money is managed correctly? Isn't that the authorities? They have the authority to invade and do the supervision. They allow that to happen.
You think it's a ripoff?
I wouldn't say it's a ripoff, but it's stealing, absolute.
But some would say that government on the part has argued that it's a better arrangement compared to not paying you at all, because these banks have gone down, these institutions have gone down. This is what government is saying, these institutions have gone down.
These institutions were created by Act of Parliament as licensed authorities to take people's money. So the average person from Bunkrubu and others who have no idea what it is, decided that, oh yes, since government, we have confidence in our government, so we're going to put our money there, and went to sleep. The people responsible to manage, to monitor, also went to sleep. So these crooks took the money and spent it. Now, the people come back and say, oh, I want my money back. They say, oh, well, you know, things happen, and unfortunately that we can't give you your money. Hey, wait a minute, why? Then government said, well, we agree with them, we don't have the money, and we're going to give you a bond 5 years that you got to wait. The guy is 79, 5 years, where might he be? And that we're not even going to pay you interest in case your survivors are going to live on the money. Are you kidding? Bank of Ghana's rate is what, 14% they rated. It's not 0%. So that means government is charging something. And the stimulus package, is that what? Reduced to 3% today? There is a coupon on it. How come you're going to give a bond of 5 years without coupon and expect people to accept? So what do they eat between now and the 5 years? And as I said, time value of money. By the time 5 years, the 100 cedis is now 20 cents.
You think that regulators should also take blame? It wouldn't be enough just to blame these banks that have gone. Those who supervised that as well
came about because of absence of
on.
Yes, the responsibility rests with two institutions, Bank of Ghana and SEC. They were the ones that licensed the people. They was the one that's supposed to monitor the people. They was the one that was supposed to supervise and make sure that people do not grant loans off the books while the authorities are sitting sleeping. And they were able to do that because of absence of absolute supervision. And so their responsibility, but we're not talking about responsibility here. We're not assigning blame. Give us our money. That's all there is. If you owe somebody, you pay. You owe somebody. Now you're going to create a stimulus package and say, well, you can apply and we can give you something. Meantime, you owe them. Give them their money first. The stimulus package should have come with resources to pay the depositors whose monies have not been paid. Simple and clear.
And I was asking that the forms of these stimulus package and all the rest, and I was saying that, so with all these separate sectors putting forward requests for government to support them, why doesn't it, maybe this request be channeled under the umbrella body of PEF, that this is what we want, and therefore do it now to save us from going down?
Well, that's what I said. We're going to present a paper. But you see,
when is the paper going to present it? Because I said now more of your members are going down.
Yes, yeah, but what can you do? You only present the paper, and even presenting the paper.
Is it coming too late?
Wait, no, because the deadline is tomorrow, and we're just completing. And I think we're just completing the final point that we're going to deliver tomorrow. But delivering doesn't mean that there's action on it. Two different things. You can advise somebody all you want, but it's their prerogative to take your advice or refuse it. So we're going to present to government. The government is also looking within their own agenda and plan and say, oh, these guys, what they think. These guys, what they want. Can we do, cannot we not do? These are unusual times. The times where government dictates and everybody backs down and say, government itself is going to fail if they don't resurrect and resuscitate the private sector. Because where do they get their taxes from? From the private sector. And if the private sectors are failing, and let's not forget, now, Ghana has one tool that will make a difference, the bankruptcy law. The bankruptcy law, if it was in existence some 6 months to 2 years ago, the government could not have taken over the banks. They could have sought refuge under the bankruptcy law. So a lot of these companies, if they file bankruptcy, no taxes, no credit payments, nothing. The ripple effect, I don't think we want to discuss it here.
And I'll be digging more to find out how your members are doing and how they are strategizing to stay in business, and also to find out in terms of there's a stimulus package. If there is now that there's a letter, document is being sent to government, when will this package be ready for businesses out there? This is PM Express Business Edition as we talk about stimulus package or policy reliefs for businesses. Which way should we go? This is the PM edition of PM Express. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition. As we talk about saving businesses out there, what form should be the support in the wake of COVID-19? There's talk about stimulus package. There's also talk about improving the environment for businesses to survive in these quite challenging times. And I know Sebonsu, as the chief executive of the Private Enterprise Federation in Ghana, we're talking about what they are doing. And during the break, I was asking you one question about PEF. You are huge, you are big. Why are you not stamping your authority in moving government to do what you have to do for private businesses out there?
George,
maybe you are a sleeping giant.
You use a word that we don't have, authority.
Oh, you're not a sleeping giant.
We're not a sleeping giant, but we don't have authority. We have persuasive.
You have the power.
No, we have persuasive evidence that we share. And the authorities, if they agree with the evidence, then they make the decisions. Look, this is the greatest opportunity for our country. Why? Because it's created a level playing field across the world. And Africa, with our youthful population, with our land resources, with our untapped markets, has the greatest opportunity to make the right decision. The right decisions to allow private sector businesses to do within the rule of law, with carrot and stick, with monitoring. So at least we will create the opportunities for our youth. 70% of African population now is young people. If you look at agriculture, the age of agriculture players is about 55 to 60. Our young people don't want to go to the farm because they think they're going to do cutlass and hoe. But if you do mechanization, if you do proper agriculture management, our food systems wouldn't attract 44% of our population. It will only allow maybe 10%. The rest will be doing some exotic business as usual. So the point is that how do we together get this arrangement in place? And as you said, PEF is this, PEF is that. On paper, yes, we have all these players. But I said we're not angry enough and we're not demanding enough. And we can't walk and invade in anybody's office. I want to talk to you, so wake up and talk to me. No, they're not going to be doing that. But I think the responsibility is on these three areas: the private sector, the executive, and legislature, to sit together and say, can you create these laws to make tax exemption to A, B, C, D, so people can do Y? Can you create the opportunity that by statute or by executive privilege that will allow A, B, C, D to be created? Government is the majority purchaser of goods and services in the country. If there's austerity on government, private sector is going to collapse. So as much as you want discipline in the government, you also want to make sure that they do not retrench in a way that private sector will not have any market.
Now, if PEF is now putting together this document to submit to government in terms of a stimulus package, then I foresee more of your members going down, because when would government look at this document, look at the concerns that you've raised? What form should the stimulus package for industries go?
George, I think you're mistaken me. We're not talking about presenting a paper to government to create a stimulus package. We're presenting a paper to government how to resurrect and recover the economy. And that is not coming only from PEF. It's coming from a consortium of the local business associations and the foreign business associations here. American Chamber of Commerce, the UK Chamber of Commerce, the German, the French, and all. Together, we have now realized that, look, we sing the same song. We suffer the same fate. Let's look at how we can. And among ourselves, if the incentives are created, one can watch the back of the other. One can link and climb the back of the other without even. But the key but is the enablers. Who has the authority to play the enablers? And you know, you go there and somebody will say that, oh, we need to collect the taxes no matter what. In this austerity period, what is happening? GRA is demanding private sector pays taxes, right? The March taxes, GRA wants people to pay. They didn't have any IGF. What are they going to pay with? How are they going to survive? They're paying employees on the back of not doing nothing, and then they're going to pay taxes? Wait a minute. So we have to find a way to balance the equilibrium in a way that, yes, government doesn't collapse. Because we have to be careful that the government itself doesn't collapse, because if they do, the austerity measures are going to affect.
But how do you turn around an economy without tackling the needs of those big industries and those small businesses out there? Because listen, which one comes first, the chicken and egg situation?
No, it's
how
not
do
chicken
you
and
turn
egg.
around the economy without looking at the need of maybe Unilever, the needs of those big manufacturers?
Thank you.
Some will say that you have to look at one first, and therefore that stimulus package you're talking about should hit, or whatever support is coming in, should hit these manufacturing firms, should hit these big industries before maybe we look at the broader economy.
Thank you. The linkage, the pull effect of the big players cannot be understated. So the big players have to look at the small potatoes in the supply chain. Because if the big players, as you said, the Unilevers and the manufacturing, the processing companies, are getting the supplies from the small potatoes and it's not being imported, okay, then there's livelihood at that end. And the economic empowerment in that community is heightened. Now, if that happens, the big players now have a market and they got their supply chain guaranteed, and they have a market that they can set. So you see, we are using the word stimulus package. No, the activity among partners, on the people, the players on the ground, is to make sure that you link it instead of importing the raw material base, instead of just, we still import cucumbers and what do you call it? The Boko red onions from Burkina and others. Why can't we do it here? Now, this COVID had brought to fore domestication of our economy. If we do not domesticate it and we depend on foreign, where are we going to get the resources to do? So we now have to turn inside. Look at the what we're watching, what we're wearing, the face mask.
Face masks, yeah.
When it hit, if we didn't have these businesses locally, we would have had enough, because the world is, everybody's scrambling to get that. But we were lucky, we have these industries within our communities, and they were able to spring up and provide for us. After this COVID-19, let's hope it goes away tomorrow. What are these companies going to do? Have we thought of reinventing them, giving them access to another market or different industries, or turning into something that is more lucrative or also lucrative as we have? So we are not looking at the broader framework of how do we incentivize business to be able to do business properly. And
I engage some businesses and they tell me that, George, you know, more layoffs is, they are inevitable. Are they exaggerating? I mean, you sit at the top at PEF. When I engage business owners and manufacturing firms and George, they tell me that, George, listen, it's a bad situation for us, and asking people to go home is the least we can do.
George, how do businesses operate? You sell a service or a product, you get an income, and out of the income, you pay your taxes, you pay your employees. If you're not selling, you're not creating any income stream. And COVID, when it started, and there was a lockdown, before the lockdown, everybody was scared to their wits. So there's no activity, there's no patronage, there's no income stream. And if you don't have income stream, and you're paying employees, you're paying out of your what? Reserves. And how long is your reserve going to be able to do what needs to be done? So those are the things that the businesses are talking about. And if after 2 months, there's no more income, and maybe not everybody is going to qualify for this package.
The liquidity support, since you don't want us to use a stimulus package.
Yes, liquidity support. Because the package comes with even using that to pay rent and pay services. You can, because it's like working capital. If not everybody is going to qualify, they say 180 companies. If you don't qualify, what are you going to do? Where are you going to get?
So layoffs are inevitable.
Of course.
Can there be any way out to let people, even stay at home for a while, salary cuts and all the rest? Because you feel that you have a feeling that
it got to be an arrangement between the employer and the employees.
You have a feeling that the workers are always an easy way out for the business owners.
To me,
say that go home, stay home.
A business's biggest asset is its employees. So it's not that the employee is the one that can be sacrificed.
And I won't mention the company. There's a company in question that, listen, they were asking their workers to go home, but still the directors were still having those fat packages still being maintained. You have a director's emolument that could take about 20 workers, and that director is still enjoying that, and you're asking about 50 workers to go home.
George, there's always going to be businesses that are bad business people. There's always, like,
and that situation is a bad business.
It's definitely a bad business, because you have employees, you're sacrificing the employees for your single individual benefit. That is untenable. So if a business is serious about maintaining standards, because this thing is going to come and haunt you tomorrow. At the end of the COVID, when you're trying to restructure and recover, those people that you let them go, word of mouth is going to spread that this is not a company you work for. A lot of people wouldn't work for a company without corporate social responsibility. A lot of people would not work for a company that doesn't treat its employees well. So to me, as I said, the best asset of a company is its employees. So once you have an arrangement and you're suffering, you're both suffering, because the company, obviously, show them the balance sheet. We're not making money. There's no income. You guys, we can return you if you agree to 50% cut. We can return you if you agree to 25%.
Well, as the directors as well.
Everybody across board.
I don't see them making those sacrifices.
Well, that is where I said bad businesses don't make right decisions. Bad business people take advantage and all. And some of our people are also bad business. But the employees you also engage. To me, that is some right that you engage. How are we doing? If a company is coming and telling employees, oh, we're suffering, things are not well, forget about it, they chop the money. No, talk to them. Let them show you the balance sheet, the evidence, and negotiate with them. Instead of going home, we will stay on, we take a third of a cut, We stay on when things get better, then you reimburse us. That is a collective arrangement to survive the company and survive the business and the employees altogether.
Now, how fast should this, since we've abused stimulus package, liquidity support that should be coming from government come in to save your members from further collapsing? Because some are saying that
I wish I could say tomorrow. I don't even know.
Is that feasible?
No, I don't.
Because I started hearing about liquidity support since this COVID-19 started.
Thank you.
And I said now there is nothing in place.
No, what I want to say is, no matter what the government is planning, let the government engage private sector together and say, okay, how can the telco chambers, how can the Chamber of Mines, how can the bankers support the micro and small enterprises to do ABC in return for a rebate tax exemption? You'll be surprised what kind of liquidity that can be created.
And is that happening?
Well, if the government doesn't come to the table and government is trying to scrambling to have a package, like everybody is talking about package, the package is not going to be enough because government itself is stumbling for resources. Doesn't have it.
There are research that talks about the fact that SMEs command a chunk of the population and the economy.
Yes,
so maybe
82%.
So maybe the 1 billion was a starting level before I look at the bigger ones.
Yes, 1 billion is for 180 businesses. That's what it says. 180. Is that enough collateral effect, impact on everybody to be able to do? No, you see, I don't want us to be, engulfed in the point that government has to do everything. I want government to come to the table and say, okay, as we said, the president announced a 2-year program. The 2-year program, I don't think the details have been worked out. Now, let's engage the private sector. I understand that they're doing some consultations and all, and that's where the paper that I'm talking about, among all this private sector, is going to be presented. Now, after you present it, then what? Do we get engaged to discuss the merits of it? Would they understand and appreciate where it's coming from? So this is where I said it must be a dialogue platform for collective engagement to make sure that the right things are put on the table, because the government itself cannot do it by itself.
Is government engaging you guys?
Government is engaging with different stakeholders, different ways. It's not always going to be the centralized one voice through to this one, and that's the end. No, they talk to a whole lot of people. But at the end of the day, what you say has to be the relevant position that will enrich and empower the private sector to do what they need to do. Because as I said, if private sector fails, Ghana fails. Because private sector pays the opportunities. They pay the government taxes, they pay the government employees because of the tax revenue, they pay and create the job opportunities for 82% and 92% of the population.
Do you see private sector coming out of this more stronger, more bruised than ever before?
We will be bruised, but the opportunity, once we create the enablers, the right enablers, I keep saying that, the right enablers, if we don't make the right decisions, those African countries that don't make the right decisions are going to go down the tubes. And I don't want to see us as...
Are the right decisions being made?
Well, they haven't been made yet.
But that will be too late then.
Well, it's not too late. It's just that the kind of things that they're looking at and the kind of packages that everybody's talking about, package. What are the enablers that will allow the package to be utilized properly? Now, you're going to give a package to George. Does George have the capacity to use it prudently? They said they're going to review in 2 weeks. How do you do that magnitude in 2 weeks and see that George has the capacity? Where's the monitoring? If it's not working, do you have the punitive measure to take it away and do other things? These are some of the things that got to be structured and put in place, so at least there's a benefit to the community.
And also, Bonsu is the Chief Executive of the Private Enterprise Federation, and we've been talking about how do we support businesses? Should it be in a form of liquidity support or the enablers or the policy reforms and the policy support to businesses out there, so that we get strong businesses to survive this COVID-19? Well, I know the debate will still be going on in your offices, in your homes, that's in what should be done to ensure that private sector businesses come out strong than ever before, so that your job is safe, my job here is actually safe, to ensure that my family is safe and well resourced to face the future post-COVID. COVID-19. I know you've enjoyed this discussion, and I know that it will go home in your homes, wherever you are. Have a great day.